It's been about 7 or 8 months since I made my last favorite SFF case video. And since then, I built in a ton of new cases. Some were just new to me and others were completely new releases. So I figured now would be as good of a time as ever to create a new list, my new favorite SFF case list. Now, a few things here. First, this isn't necessarily the best cases ever, right? I haven't built in every single small form factor case available. That's my goal to do that one day, but I have yet to do it. And this is more of just my personal favorite ones, things that have stuck out to me as I've been doing this channel. A couple of rules here. First, the case actually needs to still be in active production, because as much as I love like the Dan C4 SFX, it's actually my personal build and I would recommend it to anybody. They don't make it anymore, at least version 1. I'm sure version 2 is going to come at some point, but as of now, that's no longer in production, so that's not going to be on the list. Also, something I'm changing from the previous video is I'm actually going to categorize them because I think that it could help make a more well-balanced list to help people. This is actually a suggestion from a commenter on the last favorites video, so a huge thanks for that. So starting off with the budget category, which I'm defining as anything under around $130. Keep in mind, SFF cases typically come at a premium. First budget favorite here has got to be the classic NR200. Now I haven't made a video on that case specifically yet, but I have built it in the past and I do have a version 2 video in the works. Now, if you don't know, there's essentially two versions of this case. The V2 you can look at as essentially the liquid-cooled version and the original NR200 as the air-cooled version. This one has been a budget staple for a really long time now, and it's for a good reason. The materials feel very high quality. They have like a smooth finish to them that actually feels really premium. So excellent build quality, understated design, massive air cooler support in the original, up to 150 millimeters, while the V2 can fit up to a 280 millimeter radiator. And both of those have room for a full-size triple slot GPU. Now, honestly, you can't go wrong with either of those. But on top of that, if you want an easy build experience, they also sell a kit that comes with a liquid cooler and a power supply already set up. So all you have to do is drop in your prepped motherboard and the GPU, and you're finished with your build. Now that kit is a little pricey, so it's not exactly under the budget banner here, but it's still a very convenient option if you want to get up and going quickly. I also need to give a shout out to the Deepcool CH160. That case is priced at only $70, and there's also no need for a PCI Express riser cable because the card can be plugged directly into the motherboard, which saves you another, I don't know, like $50 to $100 depending on the cable. Now, I think that's pretty important in this category because there are other cases out there that are very good and they're priced very similarly, but once you add that cable, you're looking at nearly doubling the price. That one also has very good compatibility. Officially, it can support an air cooler up to 172 millimeters, which is pretty massive for an SFF case. Then you have the option to fit an ATX power supply if you're using a shorter GPU. Otherwise, you'll need to use an SFX power supply, and you would officially be able to support a GPU up to 305 millimeters, although I was able to fit one up to a 310 when I was testing it. Now, unfortunately, as much as I do like this case, Deepcool has been sanctioned in the US, meaning we can't get it here anywhere, which it's a real shame, but I figured I'd at least mention it here for other countries. So next up is mid-range. This is a pretty tough one because it encompasses the majority of the cases, and things start to heavily depend on your personal taste. But the first one that comes to mind every time is got to be the end case or the formed T1. That one has exceptional top-tier build quality with all the pieces made of CNC'd aluminum, a very modern look. I really love the sharp corners, the consistent panel gaps along every seam, and the two-tone design options are striking. For a 9-liter case, you also have a ton of component versatility as well. Now, I'm not 100% sure if they're the first to do this. Someone can let me know in the comments, but if they're not the first, they're one of the first to pioneer the adjustable center. This allows you to prioritize GPU compatibility or CPU cooling clearance, depending on your needs. But it also allows room for a 240 millimeter radiator. So picking up an AIO with a low clearance pump, you can stuff a full-size 3-slot Founders Edition GPU while still being able to properly cool a higher TDP CPU. Now, the downside is that you have to assemble the case yourself, and that might be pretty intimidating for a new builder. Now, apparently the version 2.5 streamlines things a bit in that regard. I don't know this firsthand, I don't have one myself, but because I've only built in the version 2.1. But I think Fractal caught on to the popularity and came out with the Terra. It takes some of those advantages that you get in the T1, but it makes it much more accessible. It comes fully assembled and with their own version of the adjustable spine that's easier to understand. But you do lose out on radiator support. Still, this has a much more approachable build process and a design that I think people will find looks far more fitting in a living room or home office. I also really like the Li Dan A4H2O. If you're planning on liquid cooling your CPU, this is one of the nicest options available. It's got a look that reminds me a lot of the T1, but like the Terra, it does come assembled with a far more streamlined build process. So the trade-off here being that there's not much in the way of versatility for this case. It is very much designed around that 240mm radiator, while remaining super compact at 10 liters. Now, I don't see this as a bad thing. It's a very focused design that accomplishes exactly what it set out to do. It shows in the details with the guards that hide the radiator and fans, and it just cleans up the overall look. With pretty minimal effort, you can have a very tidy looking build, which I appreciate, even if it does get covered up. This video was sponsored by FlexiSpot. I was having some back pain and tension in my shoulders, which was relieved quite a bit whenever I got my standing desk from FlexiSpot. This one is the E7 Pro, but sometimes I want to sit. Not that there's anything wrong with standing all day, but I do find that I have a little bit better concentration and focus personally when sitting. Anyway, that leads me to needing a new chair because I'm pretty sure that was the culprit for my bad posture and back pain. Now, buying a chair is a far more personal thing than I previously realized. One chair that's incredibly comfortable to one person might not work at all for somebody else. And because of that, I was a bit unsure about getting a new chair online because you don't get to try it before you buy it, which is why it's really nice that FlexiSpot also offers a 30-day return policy. So it takes the risk out of trying it, and if you do decide to keep it, you also get a 10-year warranty. So this is the C7. It's a premium ergonomic chair. This one caught my eye admittedly because aesthetically, I just think it's a pretty good looking chair. They've got a few color options. I ended up going black because it's a pretty safe choice, right? But what sold me on it is the crazy amount of adjustability. So like I was saying before, a chair that's comfortable for one person might not work for another. And because of the level of customization here, it seems far more likely that I'll be able to adjust it the right way for me. And look, I don't think I realized how bad my old chair was until I sat in this new one. Once I figured out how to properly adjust the height, the headrest, tilt, back support, all of that stuff. And the big bonus for me is actually the footrest. This is an add-on that I thought could be nice when I just need 20 minutes or so to rest my eyes or whatever, because look, I have 2 kids, a third on the way, okay, I get tired. And yeah, it's a very nice way to just have a few minutes to myself to relax at work. So if you're interested in checking one out for yourself, they have an offer code, and at the time of making this video, they actually have a pretty major sale going on that I think is worth checking out. For high budget cases, admittedly, I have not built in a ton of super expensive cases. I'm usually hanging in the mid-tier area, as I think that's obviously where you get the better balance between cost and quality. But if price is no barrier, then I really loved working in the Couge Z18. Now, I don't really see anyone talk about this case much, but that's probably because it costs nearly $300. But since my build in it a few months ago, I have frequently thought about it and have heavily considered moving to it as a personal build. Now, starting from the outside, I just love the overall look. The two-tone silver and black is my favorite color scheme, and I think it's implemented very well here. It's also got a glass window that's built into the entire outer shell. So this is made of a super thick 4mm aluminum, and I don't know, it's just a solid, very high quality case. Now, I could tell the second I took it out of the box that it was made of very high quality materials and it justified its price, which is what you would expect, and for me, it delivers. You can fit up to a micro ATX motherboard in here, along with a 240mm AIO and a full-size 3+ slot GPU. I went with a 4080 Super on my first build, and I was initially worried about the 12-volt high power cable adapter bridge hitting the shell when I lowered it down, but it fit absolutely perfect. And everything just fits perfectly, really. The inner housing kind of insets all the IO so that there's no risk of snagging on it when you slide the shell on and off. It's just a super clean, smartly designed case that's easy to build in and that's easy to get in and out of when you're trying to make an upgrade. And yeah, I just really love that case. I also want to give a big shout out to the Nanook S and R. The attention to detail and care put into this product is insane. From the bespoke packaging to the incredibly high quality materials, like the super thick all aluminum outer shell that, just like the Couge, it slides on and off to reveal all of your components inside. Which you can actually run this without the shell if you wanted to and just have that open frame look. It's probably the most unique and my favorite looking case on the list, but it's also the most expensive. There's a ton of different customization options as well, like lighting and other material options for the front panel. Now, I've only used the pre-production unit and was really impressed by it. Thorzo needed to make some updates to improve the design for the production run, and assuming all goes well there, I could see this case becoming my personal overall top favorite. So I'm excited to see what that final version looks like, and I will definitely have a video on the production version once I get my hands on it. So now let's get to the ultra small or portable category. And there are 2 very clear winners here for me. The GemCase C9 is a case that seemingly came out of nowhere. It's a 4.4 liter case that can easily be thrown into a backpack and will take up very little space on your desk. It's super rigid, made of a powder coated steel, with a front design made of real wood. But the thing that makes it stand out the most for me against something like the Velco 3 is the build experience. It is a far more straightforward build. Now, I'm not going to go through step by step or anything like that here. If you want to see exactly what that looks like, I'll have the full video listed in the description. But in short, the Velco 3, you basically have to take the entire case apart and then piece it all back together. Whereas generally speaking with the gem case, you basically open up the side panels and drop in the parts. The guys behind the project are super passionate about it and they continue to improve upon the design. And they've also got some plans to bring some new cases in the future. And with this being their first case, I am really excited to see what they have in store for us. Now, the big alternative here is that aforementioned Velco 3. This one is probably the most popular in the size category and for a really good reason. It is built like an absolute tank. It also has powder coated full steel construction and is slightly smaller than the Gemcase C9. Although I should mention that the C9 can support two 92mm case fans, whereas the Velco 3 cannot. Now, I wouldn't really be worried about throwing either of these in my backpack, but the Velco does have a slight edge on build quality. But again, it does come with a more complicated build process. Still, the end result is well worth it in my opinion, especially if you want one of the smallest possible 4060 or now 4070 builds without the need for mods or special equipment. Now, to be clear, before someone gets pissed off at me, I'm not saying it's going to be the world's smallest. I built a 4060 PC that is 3.59 liters in the Yocto, but that's not really a case built for portability. The Fractal Ridge is easily my favorite vertical case. Now, just from an aesthetic standpoint, I think it's an incredibly clean looking design. It's got a little bit of a console-like look to it, but a more mature console. And it's far more fitting in a living room setting compared to, most PC cases. To be clear though, you do have the option to set this one horizontally if that works better for your entertainment center or under a monitor stand, things like that. But it's definitely a vertical first design. So for a 12.6 liter case, you get pretty reasonable CPU cooler clearance. I was able to fit a Noctua NHL 12S, which has 70mm in total height, and that's the official max height for the case. And while I only filled the top half with two large case fans and a Founders 4070, you can fit up to a Founders 4080 or 4090 if you're willing to do a little bit of work for it. The Sunny Side Up Design's Meshroom S has got to be the most compatible case that I've used. I've somewhat recently did a productivity build where I fit everything that you would typically expect in a small form factor case, a 240mm radiator, ITX board, etc., but with an absolutely massive Gigabyte Aero 4090, which is 342mm in length. So that's pretty huge, but what impressed me more was when I was able to bring almost everything from my 50 liter pre-build down into this 14.9 liter case. So that's the full-size ATX motherboard, along with a 240mm radiator and a 3080. Of course, doing this does come with some compromises. You don't have access to the bottom PCI Express slots, and I did need to buy an SFX power supply to make everything fit. But still, I don't know any other case at this size that can do this. I found the build quality of the frame itself to be great, but the side panels, they need more rigidity. Those can easily bend, and because they're so malleable, it's pretty difficult to get them back straight if you do accidentally bend them. So I'm really hoping that they can get that build issue resolved, because otherwise the arranged space is thoughtfully designed and its versatility is nearly unmatched. If you want to find out more about the build experience, the thermals, or any other specifics around any of the cases that I've went over today, I will have links to all of the videos I've done with them in the description below. Anyways, let me know, what did I miss? Tell me why my list sucks in the comments. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.